Hello everyone, I'm going to speak just briefly about delegation in nursing. We do have some delegation exercises that I will be uploading to the course. Make sure that your team has reviewed and done and selected at least one of the options of the delegation exercises and worked through as a group prior to class next week. So why do we delegate in nursing? Florence Nightingale viewed delegation as a critical skill. Obviously, we've already talked about time management, and the nurse now is really more of a caregiver, but also a coordinator of care with subordinates and other disciplines. So feeling comfortable and understanding the dynamics of how best to delegate to ensure that care gets done and is safely done is a critical element in the function of the nurse. These are a few of the definitions that we'll talk through in the remainder of the video here, but just know that these terms are key ones to really pay attention to and know the definitions and how they really apply, particularly related to test questions and things that deal with delegation. So for delegation in our discipline, the National Council for State Boards of Nursing has a wonderful delegation guidelines that it was done in 2005, but make sure that you click on this link and review those guidelines, because you're going to see that legally kind of what you're held to in terms of how do you delegate things to licensed practical nurses and how do you delegate to assistive personnel, and recognizing that at the state level, for those of you that may be in different states when you work going forward, that each state's Nurse Practice Act is going to outline what activities can be delegated. North Carolina here, of course, has some unique things where we have LPNs and what they're allowed to do. We have nurse aide ones. Some agencies have nurse aide 1+4 NA2 task, and then there is someone who is technically certified as a nurse aide 2. So all of those are different. Most states that you go to do not have a secondary level for nursing assistants, but as the volume of patient population gets larger, and if there's not enough nursing personnel, as we talked about in previous classes, there is potential for other layers to be brought into different states to kind of deal with some of the nursing shortage and the tasks that may need to be done. So keeping all that in mind, that it could be a changing process, is important also. So the model for delegation and how to decide, key elements is you have to assess the condition, the situation, and really, as using nursing process, plan ahead for what types of actions in the day-to-day work that may need to be delegated or are safe to be delegated. You have to be able to communicate well, which we will talk a little bit more in the tape about communication skills. But being very clear and concise and personable in that communication so that people respect you and want to comply with your request for delegating activities. Again, as the nurse, we know if you delegate something, you still are responsible for it. You still have to supervise it. You have to evaluate, go back and see how well the task was done, and then provide feedback to that subordinate or that unlicensed person to give them feedback so they know what those boundaries are and what your expectations are for the future for ongoingly improving their performance of those types of delegated tasks. So here are 5 factors to assess when making a decision about when and if it's appropriate to delegate. Is there a potential for harm related to the condition, the situation? If that's the case, then maybe this is not something you want to delegate. Of course, don't think of every what-if catastrophe, but, if someone's a little unstable, it might not be the best time to delegate. Another thing is complexity of the task. How complex is this task that you're planning on doing? Do you know the competency level of the person? Do you know that they understand the complexities of the task that you're going to delegate? Third, problem solving and innovation is required. So sometimes, you may think, well, if one portion of it is not risky and that could be delegated, and then you do another portion of the task, then, you have to kind of think not as black and white and not as absolute, but also how can two people work together to accomplish a bigger task. So thinking outside the box is important, but looking at, am I really using all the resources that I can in this situation to get things done in a better time frame and more accurately or timely or more to the patient's satisfaction, the better. A fourth element is unpredictability of the outcome, and that's sort of along the same issue with number one, potential for harm. Are you very sure that with a predictable mindset, you're sure that this task that's being delegated is pretty routine, is pretty predictable in terms of, it's going to be a simple thing, not a lot of potential negative outcomes could come from this task, then of course that's one that could be more optimally delegated. If it's something that maybe someone, could put in a Foley catheter, for example, but the patient is terrifically obese, or the patient's totally uncooperative or confused, then those are elements that add in unpredictability of the outcome. So then that might be that you want to go with the nurse aide 2 to help put in a catheter versus just do it, have them try to do this solely. And then again, the level of patient interaction, are they able to comprehend and follow commands? Adds a big level of help if that's the truth. If the person is not really able to interact well, or is unconscious or has other problems going on, then there's more need for nurse oversight. So 5 rights of delegation. You've seen this before: right task, right circumstance, right person, the right direction and communication, which is one of our key elements in healthcare. If the nurse does not be extremely clear and precise about what it is that they want done and how, and not just flippantly, say go do X, need to be very precise there. And then right supervision and evaluation deals with really going to see, how well did they do it, and providing that feedback that we already talked about. So what is the unlicensed assistance personnel's role in delegation? They need to be prepared to receive delegation. They already know the usual tasks that are going on that should be part of their job role. They should already be thinking ahead just as you are. Well, I've got so many BASS that need to be done today. I have vital signs that are usually done at a certain time. I have different tasks that are part of my workload and assignment. It is a performance issue on a UAP's job if they continually act as though they do not understand what the normal tasks should be. And you're having to say, could you go bathe so-and-so? Could you go clean this person up? Could you empty the urinal? Those are things that should be kind of already understood as a basic thing that they're to be doing. And so you need to really pay attention to whether they're doing some of those basic things, and then delegate more, or make it real clear that the expectations are that is the norm. And that's hard to do sometimes, but you'll find that sometimes people will have less respect for a new nurse, and take advantage sometimes. So you really want to pay close attention to this, because it's very pivotal early on when you're dealing with this, because we don't do a lot of this in school, that you really are on top of this and not at the mercy of this. Again, participate in communication and information exchange. They should be expecting that you're going to give them things to do. They should ask for clarification. They should make sure they're understanding. They should accept the delegated task. They should come back for clarification if they don't understand. If for some reason they don't feel like that they are competent in something, they should definitely ask for additional training or supervision. And they should confirm the expectations and the plan of care so that they have the best understanding going into the delegated task. These are just some information that talks about the delegator's accountability. You may, delegate an act to somebody that is in a lower position, but you are not absolved of the ownership of that. So in many ways, you have to be the one that intervenes and is prepared to follow up every single time. And, there's a lot to be said about people feeling like, well, I didn't follow up, or I didn't have time to follow up. And that's where sometimes the nursing process can break down. And again, here's some more information about the delegatees' accountability. So making sure that you hold them accountable for their accountable things is part of your job as well. Again, here's some other accountable 3 organizational principles. You have to make sure that you're following legal guidelines and organizational policies. You have to make patient safety and a key element, and that patients are accountable for their part in things as well. And then making sure that knowledge and education is there to support delegation. These are just a few more slides that I'll kind of click through, but you can look through a little bit more at your leisure. Prioritization is also a key element. How do nurses really use this ongoing assessment to kind of figure out, well, I've got 5 or 6 things going at the same time, and of those, what can I delegate, or what portion of things can I delegate, and which one of those is the most important? Really drives your time management. You're not going to always prioritize perfectly in the beginning, but it's not really usually it's often a non-sequential decision-making process. So in your head, you're running around with 5 or 6 things that, if you're lucky, that's all, that need to kind of be done in the next little bit. And then some other element comes up, and you finish one task and it comes off the list, and then that's something you need to follow up on. So it can be really complicated to maintain that list. So in terms of prioritization, making sure that you kind of have something that you use, whether that's some work list in the computer system that helps support you to prioritize. A running list in your head is great, but also having some other notes or different things. And then the other thing is, can nurses really delegate to other disciplines? Their job is to coordinate care, but they technically cannot say to another discipline, you must go do this task. So that adds into it another element of, how do I coordinate care with other people and request their assistance, but not come off like I'm delegating to them, because they have their own disciplinary work as well to handle. And this is just some listing of prioritization hierarchy. We'll get into, you'll see more of that in your prioritization questions that we do in an ongoing way. And I'll add you one more link in here for the last part of this.